Hi. I did this primary source exercise on Frederick Douglass, specifically What the Slave is the 4th of July, published in 1852. We're really asking the question, why should we celebrate racism, inequality, um, during the 19th century, mid-19th century? Key concepts for this, of course, Frederick Douglass. He's one of the most important African American leaders of the 19th century, mainly for abolitionists. Uncle Tom's Cabin. This was a anti-slavery novel. Really important to this. It shows how brutal it was being a slave. It really gives you a good representation of it. It's a really good novel. Um, and then the Fugitive Slave Act, part of the Compromise of 1850, it strengthened the ability of slaveholders to recapture. And what this basically means is before, if a slave had gone out of the South, the slaveholding states, they essentially would be free. Not always, but a lot of the times they'd be free. Um, what this does is that changes that completely. The South can just actually go back and get their slave. They're not free, right? And as you'd assume, we're right next to the Civil War in terms of time period. This would make the South pretty angry, right? Because it gives a lot of strength to the North. Um, and we're fighting for that strength, the South and the North, in the situation, leading up to the Civil War. Author Douglass was a enslaved man who escaped and became a leading abolitionist and activist. We talked about that a little bit earlier. Credibility, personal experience, right? It's really easy to say um, without experiencing something how it was. And a lot of the times, when that happens, it starts to become farther and farther from the truth. So saying like a primary source from experience, gives it a lot of credibility, especially from someone that was free at one point and a slave at one point. His goal was to expose hypocrisy, celebrating freedom in a slaveholding nation. It's kind of silly. Um, Obviously, not everyone is free, so why should he celebrate it? And then here's a really good quote. Fellow citizens, pardon me, allowed me to ask, why am I called upon to speak here today? What have I, or those I represent, to do with your national independence? Right, and really what he's saying is exactly what I just said a second ago. Why should he be celebrating when he's not the one with independence? He was a slave. He had to work for free. Didn't get the rights that everyone else had. Why should he be celebrating that? Then here's some historical context. U.S. divided over slavery before the Civil War, right? So this is right before the Civil War. We know the Civil War is kind of caused by the slavery um, thoughts that the South and North had. Then abolitionists started to gain momentum leading up to the war, right? So people like Frederick started to lead others. It started to gain traction at this time. Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, we just talked about that earlier in the last slide. Douglas's speech was delivered 1 year before Uncle Tom's Cabin, which we mentioned a little bit earlier. That kind of shows you that this movement was picking up around this time. Then here's a good quote. The 4th of July is yours, not mine. You may rejoice, I must mourn. And this has the same idea that we're seeing here, where he shouldn't be needing to celebrate something that he doesn't get. So in fact, he's mourning it because he actually lost freedom rather than gaining it. Argument. He was kind of thinking it's wrong to celebrate liberty while millions remain enslaved. Why should he celebrate this? A lot of his brothers, sisters, family, you know, um, other people with the same colored skin are not free, right? Wanted to convince his audience that slavery contradicted the ideals of freedom and justice, right? So the abolitionist movement, he wants to kind of convince people, show them that this is not okay. We need to change this. This is something that our society, our community, our country shouldn't have in general. And then here's a good quote again. Are the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? So obviously we have the Declaration of Independence. Everyone's supposed to be free, right? We're all supposed to have these laws and yeah, we're just not experiencing that. Not everyone is. It's not fair. Does it extend to us? Because we're not seeing it, right? Then significance. Really this just helps show the race, slavery, abolitionist movement during the early to mid 19th century, before the Civil War. Then it helped grow Northern opposition to slavery, right? So the movement leading up to the Civil War. And then here's another quote: I am not included within the pale this glorious anniversary. Your high independence only reveals the immeasurable distance between us. Right? So as they're celebrating, it just shows the difference that these people are experiencing. It's a whole different world just based off your color in our country at this moment. Then why does this matter today? Well, firstly, it connects to modern struggles for equality and justice. We can't say our world right now, after the civil um, rights movement and after the war, is perfect, because we know it's not, and it'll probably never be. It'd be really hard to have a perfect world, right? But it helps us connect the past to the future and how do we get here, right? It helps us understand, think freely about freedom today while understanding our past. So I guess I just explained that a little bit. And then liberty in America is not and hasn't always been universal, right? So it's really good to realize where have we come from, how are we at this point, what do we need to do to make it even better, right? And that's I guess the whole presentation. So thank you.